February 24th, 2007, Michelle and I drove to Austin, Texas for the World Wellness Weekend.
So here we are with Joe Vitale, Mr. Fire himself, author of Attractor Factor and many other wonderful
Way
books.
too many books to list here.
Yes.
I've lost track.
Just wanted to ask, how did you originally find out about the law of attraction, especially after going through such a rough time early on?
Yeah, well, there's a book that came out around 1905, and it's called The Law of Attraction, and I believe it's by Walter Atkinson. It's considered part of the New Thought movement that was around in that turn of the century, and that was my introduction to it, because he talked about the law of attraction. He talked about sending out vibes from yourself, and it was attracting. They even used phrases like mental radio. In other words, your mind was sending out these vibes. It was almost like a radio signal before we actually had radios. And then later, the most obvious place that I learned a lot about the attraction stuff was about Esther and Jerry Hicks with the Abraham material, and I've been with them for 20-some years. I helped them market their very first books. I helped them put their website online. I wrote the introduction to the book Sarah. I wrote some ads for them that were in New Age magazines, like New Age Journal as I remember it, and they're very much about the law of attraction. So I began to live it and breathe it by being around Jerry and Esther and listening to the Abraham tapes a lot. And then, of course, I was still learning it on my own. I was finding that it was working, so I was reinforcing it. So it was just a long evolutionary process, but it goes all the way back to those early books that I was reading from the late 1800s and early 1900s.
Well, I know that in my life, in applying the law of attraction, and I also do resonance repatterning, and then combining the two, it's just every moment is a jaw-dropping moment for me whenever I see it come manifested. So what moments, I know that you've had a lot of experiences, but what's one that really stands out for you?
My biggest success story is one of my first ones. I had this fantasy that I wanted to attract a BMW Z3, which is a sports car. It's the James Bond car. Some people have seen it in the early James Bond movies. And I had made this intention that I wanted to attract the car, and I wanted to attract the money for it. I didn't want to go just buy the car like everybody else goes and does. I didn't want to just take the money out of savings or something. I wanted the money to fall out of the sky. So I set this intention for the car, and I started thinking about it, and I started to get ideas. And one of the ideas was divinely given to me. This is the way the law of attraction works. You state what you want, and then you are open to opportunities, and you have to seize action when they come. And I got this idea to hold what had never been done before, an e-class online. The idea with an e-class is I was going to have 5 weeks of courses, and once a week I would send an email to people. That was their lesson, and they would have homework to do, which they would return by email. And I thought, I don't want too many people in this class because I have to give them personal involvement, but I wanted to charge enough to be able to get the car. So I ended up charging like $1,500 per person to get 15 or 16 people in this e-class. They have to keep in mind, first of all, this was a preposterous idea. Nobody had done it before, and I was asking people to pay $1,500 to get 5 emails from me. Now, would anybody do it? I thought it might be a crazy idea, but I thought, you know what? This is coming from inspiration. This is what I want to attract. The idea came to me. I attracted the idea for it. Let's see if it works. I set my email out. I raised something like $23,500 overnight because so many people signed up for it. You got to remember, I was early on with this. Nobody had done this before. I didn't know what an e-class was. I had a very small mailing list. There was a lot of things that should have made this not work. I, of course, bought the car. I still have the car. It's kind of my trophy car. I've gone on and had I have another BMW. I have another car. It's a handmade Panos that I was talking about this morning. But that was my real biggie, where I attracted something that should have been impossible.
Wow, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So why do you think that the law of attraction has gained such huge popularity right now? What is it about this time?
Well, I think, for one thing, we're desperate. I think people are really hurting. They're really afraid. We've gone through all kinds of things with wars, with terrorism, with terrorists. People are afraid to fly. They're afraid to see each other. They don't know what works. They're trying to set their hands in business. They're scared, they're confused, and they're reaching out. And I think what's happening is that they're reaching in. They're reaching out, they're looking for another tool, another technique, something that'll work, and I've done so much of that. They're finally being directed to where the real source is, inside themselves. So in many ways, it's like they're coming home. But I think the real reason they're looking for it is that they're starving for it. They're desperate for it. And then when they find it and it's working, it's like, oh, finally, the Holy Grail. You know, and then people tell other people.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for putting the information out there and for your contribution.
Thank you. This has been great. Onwards.